Welcome everyone, I'm Alan Miller, I'm one of the co-founders of the Together Association, and this evening we're in Aberdeen, which is very exciting to be here in Scotland, part of our Scotland Together tour. We were in Glasgow last night, fantastic evening, and we're really excited to be at this great venue, OGB Podium, next to Aura nightclub. Aberdeen, which is obviously very famous for many reasons, but industry and energy and what's going on with North Sea oil, and some people trying to suffocate all of that, but also because of its nighttime economy and its contribution intellectually to things. But before we start, and I'll introduce you to all the speakers, what are we going to do in Aberdeen? What are we going to do with our streets? We're going to free our streets? Can't hear you, Aberdeen. What are we going to do? Tell everyone at home. We're going to free our streets. What are we going to do with democracy? That's exactly right. So in the spirit of all of that, we're going to have an open debate this evening and talk about some of the key and pressing issues that we are faced with. And we've got some very particular issues in Scotland that are happening, but they're part of a general set of issues. We've heard of things like bus gates, 15-minute cities, low emission zones, clean air zones, ultra low emission zones, low traffic neighbourhoods, all underpinned by ideas of zero and clean air. All seems very reasonable until we start realising that we haven't had a big open public forum, we haven't had a big discussion about costs and benefits to us, we haven't talked about the implications for business and mobility and residents. It's kind of being imposed on everyone by stealth, in a sense in which, be quiet, this is what's good for you, and it's going to happen anyway. And many people feel very concerned about this. Obviously, it's impacted our mobility, our ability to freely move around places, whether it's just to see family and friends, whether it's to run our businesses, retail, hospitality, and, you know, this has been of grave concern. And at the same time, many people around the UK have been fighting back, and we've seen some real great steps in that direction. Places like Warrington and Newcastle dispensed with low traffic neighbourhoods. We know in the Midlands, the clean air zones, many people have not been paying. That's been upheld. We have also seen that Rishi Sunak has been forced into having a report done on Liverpool streets and low traffic neighbourhoods, and Mark Harper and the Department of Transport, because of all the work you and many of you at home and others have done in terms of campaigning and insisting that this is addressed, has had to fall back and stop funding Liverpool Streets, which actually was an initiative that Conservatives were implementing, and has pulled away from that, and now has passed guidance to say that local authorities can't just impose things if the majority of residents are not happy with it. Now, it is only guidance, but what we're seeing is that when people begin to have their voices heard and take action and work together, they can have an impact. And that's as true on the discussion of net zero, and from everyone from as far as the GMB and people that Labour say this is impacting and damaging working people, to the big discussion of the Conservatives that's happened and across the board with that. And of course, it's not just the mainstream parties, but lots of independents are discussing this thing, and many people in Britain are very much concerned with all of these measures. So, this evening we're going to be talking about all of that. I'm going to quickly get on to introduce you to the speakers, but we did invite MSPs and councillors to attend tonight, and we didn't, yesterday no one showed up or responded, or in fact, that's not true. We did have one councillor who came. He didn't speak, but he did attend, which was important. But there's a sense in which elected representatives and also some candidates don't think it's necessary to address constituents and residents. In fact, it's similar to what we've seen in other parts of the United Kingdom, like in Bath, where Councillor Sarah Warren, who's a Lib Dem, has not showed up for 378 days, I think, to address the questions of these measures, traffic measures, bus gates, low traffic neighbourhoods, on residents, because they don't think they need to, or at least they're not sure perhaps what to say. And this cavern, this gap, this kind of sense that there's this huge gap between us, ordinary people, what we need, and those people that are imposing these measures is consistently there. But we did get one response. She got a response, and I'm going to read this one out just briefly, saying thanks for your invitation. We would have been there, and this is from Tess White, MSP, with her colleague, Lee Penn and Maurice Goldham, and Douglas Lumsden. They would be here, however, they have to be in Edinburgh attending Parliament. But she did say that they think that the measures are egregious and problematic. Now, the thing is, this is not about MSPs and colleagues and councillors alone. This is about how we engage with the public and how we encourage more people to have their voices heard. And that's why we're having public forums. But it does demonstrate that when we actually organise, we can have an impact on things. And that's the spirit of what we want to sort of discuss a bit more today and look at how that plays out. So, I'll be very interested to hear your contributions to all of that. And I'm going to just introduce the speakers now, and we're going to get straight into it. So first of all, we're going to hear from Dr. Stuart Waiton. He's a senior lecturer in sociology and criminology at Abertay University, and is also chair of the Scottish Union for Education. And Stuart explores key themes associated with over-regulation of everyday life, the modern forms of criminalisation in society, and amoral panics. He's an author and a writer. He's an author of Scared of the Kids, Curfews, Crime, and Regulation of Young People, The Politics of Antisocial Behaviour, Amoral Panics, and Snob's Law, Criminalising Football Fans in an Age of Intolerance. Then we have Graeme Craib is a local Aberdeen campaigner who's been very concerned with the impacts of bus gates and the low emission zone. Graeme's a chartered engineer and has been doing a lot of campaigning locally and will be familiar with many of you. We're also very pleased that Elizabeth Leslie is joining us this evening. Elizabeth is another local Aberdeen campaigner who's very concerned about the bus gates, net zero related issues, and of course the LEZ that's been called all sorts of things like the exclusion zone and the low economic zone, among other things. And then also we're joined by Pam Peters, who's a campaigner who's been campaigning in Edinburgh against the low emission zone and some of the related policies, and is also a Together Scotland ambassador. So please give a warm welcome to the panel this evening. I'm gonna ask the speakers when they speak to speak directly into this mic for the live stream. It's very important. Just to say, on your chairs, this is really important, you'll have some flyers. It's a bit like Lord Kitchener's Your Country Needs You, but it says Together Needs You, and it's very true. And just if you would, if you're a member of Together, put your hand up just so we can see how many. Well, thank you. Everyone give the members a round of applause, because actually, it's because of the members that we're able to be here. And we'd love you to join this evening, because that's how we keep campaigning. And for all those that say, where do you get your money from? This is where we get our money from people who believe up and down the country that we need to have our voices heard. We need an insurance scheme that we're responsible for, that we have our agency and our autonomy that can assert itself when we have so many things being imposed upon us. So there's a QR code on there, or a website, and there's some people here tonight that are helping out. And I just want to say a big thank you to Sheila and all the volunteers who've been fantastic, and Emma in the venue. And now we're going to get straight into it, and I'm going to ask Stuart to start. So over to you, Stuart, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Howard. Is that on, or should I shout? Yep, that. Shout, okay, I'll do my lecture levels, okay?
So I do it into the mic if you can, yeah.
My name is Stuart Waiton, I'm an academic. I'm not going to talk much about the specifics of the issues that have been raised here, but hopefully you will understand where I'm coming from by the time I'm finished and think there's some relevance in what I'm talking about. I'm also the chair of the Scottish Union for Education. The stat line for that is education, not indoctrination. Hopefully some of you understand what that means. If you want to know anything about that, I'm also trying to recruit. So come and see me. I've got leaflets and business cards about what we're trying to do in Scotland. And essentially I could do the same speech, which I'm going to do mainly about crime and law, around education. I could virtually do the same speech. Again, hopefully you'll see the logic. I live in Dundee. We've now had a low emission zone introduced in Dundee. There are no cars in Dundee, practically or virtually. In terms of problems with emissions, as far as I can tell, there are none. I've actually asked the council about this and I can't say any, but we've got it anyway. The car park that I would often use for work has now been shut. It's now going to be turned into an electric car hub and a bike hub. So basically it's going to be, there's a year of work being paid for, and then it'll be empty, except for a few electric cars and a few bikes, I suspect. And I suspect a lot of the people here feel that councils are trying to virtually make life harder for them rather than easier. And I think that is a worrying development and something that is quite true. And as a criminologist, I notice this in terms of law. So I'm going to tell you a few things I've come across that I think relates to this. Law should reflect the moral values of the people. That's what the essence of law should be. But increasingly, laws are being made with the explanation that they are there to change the culture. Right? That's the argument. As you need this law to change the culture. Not reflect the culture, but to change the culture, as in change your culture. This, I think, could probably be summed up as a shift from what's called the rule of law to the rule by law. So laws are used and passed to force you to behave in a way that the people who run society think is correct. And I think our political representatives have lost any understanding of this word representative. And it's clear to me that they don't think of themselves as part of the people, but better than the people. People who need to be re-educated, who need to have their culture changed. And I think we can see this very clearly, this elitist perspective and attitude in the laws that are made. So take the named person. I'm not sure how many of you know the named person. I helped set up a campaign against it. It was a law that was trying to get every child in Scotland to have a state guardian. 70% of people, when polled, were opposed to the named person. 70% of politicians in Hollywood voted for the named person. It was eventually overturned in the Supreme Court in England because it was illegal. The new smacking ban that was introduced, it would be illegal if you smacked hard. Now, if you did that to a small child, that is now a crime in Scotland. 74% of the public opposed it. 78% of politicians made it law. And this was introduced with tearful politicians crying and weeping about what a wonderful thing is that they can now change the culture of Scotland. With the Hate Crime Act, an act that means that you can be arrested for saying who knows what in your own home, which has been introduced in Monday, in case you don't know. I suspect the figures for this would be exactly the same in terms of how many people in the public think you should be arrested for saying something in your own home, compared with how many politicians actually vote on this. And they say that there's consultation. That's how they justify this. There's been consultation on all these laws. And I've been part of a number of these forms of consultation. Each one appears highly democratic, but it's largely a sham, a performance of public involvement where the decision has essentially already been made. And you can see this with the hate crime bill, for example. Lord Brackadale did a review of the laws, and in it, he notes that most of the groups who sent in submissions, because you can send in submissions to the Parliament about with your thoughts, most of the groups that sent in submissions supported the new hate crime bill. Most of the individuals that sent in completely opposed it, and there were far, far, far more individuals who sent in opposing it compared with the groups. Brackadale doesn't make anything of this, nor does he make anything of the fact that the vast majority of the groups who were in favour of it are actually paid by the state, charities and other organisations who basically get state funding. And these laws have a serious impact on ordinary people's life, a substantial impact in some cases, and the hate crime bill could have an incredible impact on people's lives. And what we never see, and I think Alan was relating to this, we never see these bills introduced after there have been mass public meetings between politicians and the public. We don't see politicians turn up to events like this, to public, to community buildings, to speak to ordinary people en masse about their proposals. That never happens. What happens is they sit in committee rooms and they have consultations and they individualise people. They'll accept your submission by post and they will choose people to go to the Scottish Parliament to sit in these committees, but they're not interested in having mass meetings and genuine discussions with the public. And the underlying reason for this, as far as I'm concerned, for these new laws, their burning desire to change your culture, is because our political class and the new elites think that you are a basket of deplorables. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can read the Human Rights Bill for Scotland consultation document, yet another law that's being forced on the Scottish people that they haven't asked for. And you'll find a bold, proud statement from the Lived Experience Board stating that the Human Rights Bill is needed for Scottish children because by implementing this new law, young people in Scotland would now grow to unlearn the prejudices taught to us by the older generations. Right? I'll read that for you again. That's you, by the way. They want young people, helped by this new human rights bill, to grow to unlearn the prejudices taught to us by older generations. And finally, in terms of another initiative that the government is trying to force onto us, we find that they want to start a pilot project where rape trials are carried out without juries. I don't know if you know about this, but this is something we're trying to push through. And why do they want this? Again, the academics, the First Minister, the politicians, and the heads of the criminal justice system explain that we need to get rid of juries in rape cases because you, the people of Scotland, believe in rape myths. Now, to put this in layman's terms, what they're saying is you are backward, sexist bigots who cannot possibly be trusted to be part of a jury. That is what they're saying about the Scottish people. And when it comes to issues to do with the environment, it seems to me that the people who run our institutions, who sit in Holyrood and on our councils, have exactly the same contemptuous and elitist view of the people. Today, Scotland is being run by people in a way that more closely resembles the behaviour expected in a medieval court than anything resembling a democracy, which is why there is an urgent need for people to stand up and to organise and to demand that we, the people, are listened to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Lots to think about there, and we'll come back on some of those things very importantly. Next, Elizabeth, please.
Okay, I don't think it does any harm to remind ourselves of how determined co-conspirators are in their quest to achieve world dominance. A Klaus Schwab quote keeps me focused on their tyrannical plans, and the quote is this: "We must have a much more top-down authoritarian government approach to deal with the anticipated public resistance." That's us. To me, that meant they meant business. And sometimes the brutal treatment of people during COVID, and still today, when we see how protesting farmers in various countries are being brutalized, is a testament to how government leaders in lockstep have taken Schwab's sentiment to heart. It is no longer even considered conspiratorial to connect the dots of everything that is being foisted upon us at present. the various tentacles, 15-minute cities, central bank digital currency, digital ID, UPI, land use restrictions, you will own nothing and be happy, all emanate from the unelected United Nations, World Economic Forum, and WHO, and by extension, the European Union. These conditions are designed to enslave us with a gradual but relentless layering on of further restrictions, sort of like the frog being boiled, but starting with a very comfortable lukewarm water. It would appear to trusting individuals that these, for the greater good policies, are nothing to be concerned about. What they miss is the interconnectedness of all these issues. Schwab's Great Reset is essentially a social contract designed to assign an electronic ID to every human being on Earth that will be linked with health records, bank accounts, and online activity. And through permanent 24/7 technical surveillance powered by AI, the global elite will constantly monitor and control our lives. And this can only be accomplished by moving us as a commodity into Agenda 2030 human settlements. They will be unable to surveil us in rural settings, so we have to be contained within 15-minute cities, or to use their own more crude term, human settlements. I mentioned we have to halt their plans, and I really do mean that. There is no point in complaining, for example, that their ULEZ signage is confusing, because that is, in a sense, accepting of the ULEZ premise. Just saying it needs to be cleaned up is not what we have to do. We have to be unequivocal that these things must stop, they're not acceptable, end of story. We're dealing with a global plan that can only be implemented locally, and it is encouraging to see around the world groundswells of initiatives challenging the councils on their local net zero policies. Each country has its own United Nations-funded organization in place to push the climate agenda within councils. In Canada, there has been success by a group called Gather 2030 in getting some councils to actually rescind their 1982 signing up to the ICLEI, which stands for Local Governments for Sustainability. ICLEI has more than 2,500 local and regional governments committed to sustainable urban development. In the UK, we have the Covenant of Mayors, with about 64 councils signed up since 2008. Aberdeen and the Shire signed up in 2009, just 2 months apart from each other. A few months back in Aberdeen, the council posted on Facebook a photo of its Lord Provost proudly unfurling a giant United Nations 2030 flag, making the UN connection indisputable. There are council watches groups springing up everywhere. In Australia, their tagline is, councils must focus on the local issues, not global issues. In Colchester, here in our UK, a council watch is successfully gaining public and council engagement. 2 weeks ago, our own Aberdeen Together group, spearheaded by our friend Alan, delivered a multifaceted, hard-hitting but respectful document to the Aberdeenshire Council Scrutiny and Audit Committee, SEC for short. The same Scrutiny and Audit Committee, which had in 2007 created a 60-page foundational document titled The Bigger Issue, which was a report on climate change, which over the years has been added to, but their 2007 SAC report remains the underpinning of the Council's current obsession regarding net zero. So in response to their big issue document, our document, which is called the People Issue, we requested accountability, we requested a risk assessment, we requested cost-benefit analysis. We pointed out inaccuracies and debunked the science that they were quoting. Our document, the People Issue, prolifically provides evidence which refutes any climate emergency. Here are a few examples from the People Issue document put forth to the Aberdeenshire Council. And I might add, I would not like to be in their shoes having to respond to it. It is recognized that Earth's climate has been changing for 4 billion years, and that we may currently be technically still coming out of the little ice age of the mid-19th century. What is not recognized, not accepted by us, what is not recognized nor accepted by us is for Aberdeenshire Council to state that there is a climate emergency and blindly follow a climate change net zero agenda that has been based only on assumptions, failed modeling, and sloppy science at our expense. A growing number of leading scientists, including Nobel laureates, say that there is no climate emergency, and this is supported by empirical data and studies. Net zero CO2 reduction is a central council policy. However, scientific method and hundreds of studies clearly show that the assumptions of CO2 being a primary driver of climate change is deeply flawed, and the policy requires urgent reconsideration. CO2, which is essential for life, is at a concentration level which is near an historic geological low, and its supposed greenhouse effect on climate is vastly overstated, since it is already at saturation level. Any further increase has negligible impact. Scotland, and indeed the UK, is simply exporting our emissions to the low-cost coal-based manufactured countries such as China and India, making it a mockery of a production year, which are anyway utterly dwarfed by global increases as a whole. Many would suggest that the whole climate change agenda is mainly about money, the net zero business being said to be worth over $4 billion every day, and the seeming bottomless subsidiaries from the pockets for an unjust transition is to some point. It is not sustainable. The council once served the needs of the local people. Today, it appears to defer to the external unelected bodies, and this needs to change. There may be no climate emergency, but there is an urgency for Aberdeenshire Council to face up to reality. So today, only having given the presentation to the council 2 weeks ago, there has been no response. But I believe the contents of our people issued document is going to turn the world upside down, some of the councillors. We hope to turn the Aberdeen Council's world upside down also by similarly presenting to them. We must keep the momentum going. The more we bring to their attention the untruths they have been exposed to, the sooner they will hopefully see many unintentional errors of their ways. At a recent council meeting I attended, concern was expressed by councillors regarding the current council autonomy, resulting in duplication of effort between councils. In regard to net zero, they were told that the Scottish Government has plans to streamline and consolidate local council net zero efforts. This has not been formally announced yet, to my knowledge, but it is an indication that the Scottish Government is full of support of everything the councillors are doing, and furthering the bureaucracy and spending on a net zero Trojan horse. Any help on any of our Aberdeen Together initiatives would be appreciated. We meet every Thursday, first Thursday of every month, and they've got the same sign basis at the very end.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Al Graeme, please. Good evening, folks.
Sure about the level and the microphone, but we'll do our best. All the women tonight, all the in the schools in I get Aberdeen, meeting trying to stand the stages, whether it's woodworks and always been toilet plugs. So they got to be with me, but all it is, you will line board mile in a glass of water because I've got fitness, vitamins. What are these? You used to all that. That's bad. So,
Yeah. What? Like, yeah, hello folks. So my name is Graeme Craib. I'm an engineer. I work in the local energy industry, and I have a background in sort of in a professional sense in engineering, and some scientific course, and maybe more in academic sense. In an academic sense, before I got to my career, I was to do my studies, and part of that was looking into things along the lines of renewables and the whole climate change, net zero aspect as well, which from here and there. But now, even going back 10 to 15 years, I had some personal evidence about some of these things, purely from an academic and scientific point of view. I come here really as a concerned citizen, and I was described me as a campaigner. I guess I'm just somebody that says, look, I see something I don't really agree with, and I'm determined to do something about it. So I started a group on Facebook about 6 months ago. In Aberdeen, we're all aware we've got the bus gates that came out last year. We've got the low emission zone coming this year. So I started a group on Facebook because I thought, well, this low emission zone's coming pretty soon. And really I wasn't really aware of anybody doing anything about it. So I started this group up. And quite quickly, we've got 50 members, 100 members, 200 members. So now we're over 2,100 people. And we get involved organising meetups, to handle flyers. We do link up with our groups in Glasgow, Edinburgh, and Dundee. We go on protests and marches and things like that. Because that's the sort of things we need to do to make our voices heard. And like Alan said earlier, this whole Together group as well is great to cover a wide range of topics and issues. Because really, just one person sitting to yourself, maybe more than like these people, you tend not to get paid attention to. And even if you're speaking with council or politicians, again, you tend to brush it aside. So really, that's a low point. Me starting that group on Facebook, and I'll share the links with you later on. If you come and see me, I'll show you people we can join in. But it's also the good point of the Together group. But anyway, as I say, I'm a concerned citizen in Aberdeen, and I'm seeing more and more issues that are coming out that really seem a little bit disproportionate or unnecessary. Stuart mentioned earlier that there's a wide range of things. One of the things that I'm going to talk about today is the low emission zone. Obviously, what I was saying, a lot of bus gates as well, but the low emission zone's coming, and I feel we really need to stop it somehow. I don't know if we will, but we'll have to try, because I think it's just going to grow and grow, and they'll do more and more things that we don't agree with, and we'll be imposed upon. One thing I think we can all agree, Aberdeen already has sea there, so why do we need a low emission zone? When you think about that, we're one of the cleanest cities in the country, in Scotland and the UK. So why are they reducing a low emission zone? My perspective is it's not needed. So why they do it? When you think about the areas it's in as well, and we thought down beside Market Street or Virginia Street, not only does that make it a bit awkward to get around, you can't go to the east of that because you get into the harbour and then you North Sea. You'll have to go the long way around, and that's going to be adding congestion and more emissions around the city. But when you also think about that area along Market Street and Virginia Street, what's down there? So we've got the harbour down there. You've got all those boats sitting there pumping fumes at the air all day. You've got the train station nearby as well, the bus station. Okay, there's some hydrogen buses just now, but they're not all hydrogen. So you've got all these vehicles that sit down there, pumping emissions in the air. So it's not just cars driving. I mentioned this to a councillor a good while ago, maybe a couple of years ago. And do you know what they said? They said, oh, they're exempt. Right. So they're exempt. Well, that doesn't stop them generating emissions. So why are you first to this? It doesn't make sense to me. I guess we all want to be sustainable. We don't want to create undue harm on the environment or use any contaminants. I think we're all agree. But these things have to be proportionate, and it doesn't seem to come from a place of necessity. It seems to come from a place of we're the council or we're the government, and this is what we're doing, and you guys just have to agree with it. For example, if the one that flows off Union Street, we've already had this in August, there's going to be more of the cities that are comes from to a lot of people with the low emissions. Why not providing alternatives? I mind they were shut down in the city centre if we had reasonable alternatives. We've all seen some of the chaos, particularly in recent years where the bridge has been closed, the road works, and Kilburn Street, the surrounding area has been closed, so you can with so much damage and infrastructure. We've all seen the chaos that sometimes happens. Even before COVID, also in Aberdeen, we get that busy. Well, whenever there was a roadworks or a crash, there was absolute chaos around the city because even back then, they didn't have the infrastructure to cope. And in my view, that's still the case. And the recent roadworks and bridge closures just showed that. So they're not providing us a reason to deny them. I guess the other thing as well I forgot to mention was that if there was always emissions being produced at the Portland's clean air or this low emission zone, you're all familiar, or maybe too familiar with the North Sea wind that just blows right through the town and just clears away any pollutants and any emission. Again, really, is it necessary? I think not. But going out and, again, maybe not campaigning as much, but going out and talking to people in public, sometimes handing out leaflets, sometimes you're talking to 200-300 people when you're out there, and just about everybody's completely against these measures. You maybe get one or two, but that's out of 200 or 300, so it's very, very small percentages. And everybody agrees when you talk to them in person or when you go online and people have discussions, whether it's in a group that I'm involved in or whether it's if you go to a council piece and whenever they post something, they're getting absolutely lambasted all the time because people are not happy. And it tends to be the unilateral view is that they're killing the city centre. We all have fond memories of Union Street going back 20, 50 years before when it was busy. There was crowds bleeding. And okay, there's progression because now we've got a lot more online shopping and footfall has reduced. But people aren't keen to go to the city now because of the bus gates, the confusion, and they don't want to get fined. And when this low emission zone comes in as well, you'll have less and less people because some people won't afford to change their cars. And I don't think people should have to change their cars. If your car has a valid MOT, it's already passed the emissions test. So why does the council say where you can and where you can't drive? I don't know. But please. So as I say, there's very little to no public support for this. So why are they doing it? If it's not necessary and people don't want it, why are they doing it? Well, I guess we've all got our own views on that. We can maybe discuss that a bit later on in the panel discussion. But in my view, it doesn't reflect democracy. And obviously this is a common theme here tonight. It is, again, a power that be, an authority imposing its will on the people. Again, we spoke about, you heard about Stuart's talking about consultations earlier. The consultation for the low emission zone, it was answered by about 70 people. And I know I didn't answer it, I didn't see it. They seem to like to slide these things under the radar because they know people won't respond to it, apart from a very small section. And I bet they were the demographic that they knew were against it. So of course they're going to come back in the way that the council wants. But really 70 people out of 250,000 in the city, it's nothing. So how can they say they've got public support for that? They don't at all. Anyway, I'm going to close now because we'll be here all day with an Aberdonian moaning on the stage. But but you're all welcome to have a go as well. We need to stop this somehow, and I don't know how. And obviously, you see in other cities, people are taking a bit more direct, dare I say, illegal methods. Can't really endorse that, but you can understand people's frustration in doing that. I think we need to take a more kind of honest approach. And the way I see it, we need to be obviously coming together with things like this. We need to be talking to our councillors and MPs, MSPs or MPs, write them letters, bombard them, make sure they can't open their door for all the mail they're getting from people that's complaining about this. Because that really is the only way they're going to listen. We need to show objection in massive, massive numbers. And that's the only way we're going to stop it. There's other things maybe we can do further down the line that's maybe a bit more abstract, shall we say. And I'm certainly not talking about, the legal things that we've heard people do in other cities. But my point is, this only stops when we say no. Otherwise, they'll keep doing it and keep doing it. And make no mistake, even if your car is allowed to drive within the low emission zone, once it's in, they will absolutely move goalposts. I think there's no doubt about that whatsoever. And eventually they'll even include EVs. I'm very sure of that. Because if we're absolutely honest, they're not doing this about emissions. They're doing this about cost, revenue, it's an extra stealth tax, and they're doing this to control us. So as I say, the only way to stop this is for us to stand up and say no. And we need to do that in massive numbers, and we also need to do that together. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Graeme. Lots to think about and discuss there. And now Pam. Finally, Pam, please. Thank you.
No idea if this is the right level for me. Where's our pointer? Is that okay? Yeah. Don't seem to want this games, but where's our technical boy? Yeah. For that bent. So is that better?
If you speak right into it, there you go. Lean in.
Better.
Yeah, well done.
Okay. Oh, we're going to do that or end your chance. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm from Edinburgh, so I've come to do the Edinburgh voting session to build on Graeme. I've been asked to give an overview of the situation there vis-a-vis the topic tonight, which was around who benefits, who loses, and who decides. I've lived and worked in Edinburgh for more than 20 years, so I've seen many changes in the council's traffic management policies in that time, and all of them have disadvantaged motorists in one way or another. We've had greenways installed, which were to prioritise buses, taxis, cyclists, and obviously those now the road available for the other users. City centre roads closed and one-way systems incremented to force traffic flow along designated routes. We've had pavements widened and traffic lights synchronised to benefit pedestrians. We've had speed limits reduced on access roads into the city and 20-mile-an-hour restrictions in and around the city. We've had parking charges and restrictions increased, and we've had the number of parking spaces drastically reduced. And obviously in Edinburgh, we've had the disruption for years while the tram network was being built. I'm not saying that all of those measures are bad, because I recognise we need a balance of travel options within any city. But the reality is that all of those policies have increased journey times, they've increased costs for motorists, and they've caused queuing traffic. The measures are often talked about by other fellow complainers as being anti-car, but I would suggest that they're more accurately described as anti-anyone whose car journey is essential. So that means they're anti-small business, they're anti-service providers, they're anti-residents who need those services and those business provision. They're anti-working mums dropping kids off en route to school. They're anti the weak and vulnerable, and they're anti the disabled and the elderly. I'm fortunate that my car journeys are rarely essential, but I believe that I should have a choice whether I make my journey by car or not. And freedom of choice is something that these policies are taking away from us. And now with the introduction of the LEZs, we're to be penalised for making choices that our politicians disapprove of. I don't remember agreeing to councillors having that right. And if we haven't voted to accept these policies, then in my book, they're being imposed on us. And surely that's not democratic. And yet we live in a democracy. And our representatives are elected to serve us. Eligible. If we aren't voting for the policies, then who exactly is deciding the way forward for the cities? And I think both Stuart and Elizabeth have given a fair summation of who is deciding it for us. And I'm sure once we open the floor to you later, you'll have your own ideas to share as well. The most recent and the most far-reaching of the anti-car policies are, of course, the LTNs and the LEZs. So in the west of Edinburgh, we have an LTN in Corstorphine, and it was implemented 6 months ago against the wishes of the majority of the residents. The council has just released their monitoring data for the first 6 months, and the impact so far, surprise, surprise, is no reduction in the volume of traffic, just displaced around the surrounding streets, residential streets, which are now being congested. And interestingly or ironically, walking and cycling has actually reduced in the past. The LEZs for us goes live on the 1st of June, and the council's own modelling has shown that it could actually make air pollution worse in other areas of the city. And that's already been the case in Glasgow, where nitrogen dioxide levels have been reported as actually having risen since the LEZ was introduced there. But air pollution data is a contentious issue in itself, because we have Scottish Government data showing that air quality in Edinburgh, Aberdeen and Dundee has been well within legal limits for the past 4 years. We also have International Air Quality Index, which rates all of our cities as good. So there are 6 categories in this index, and they range from good to hazardous. Anything up to 50 is classified good. Hazardous is 300 plus. So last night when I checked, Edinburgh was 17, Glasgow was 13, and Aberdeen was 13. So what problem are they trying to solve? Because it sure isn't air quality, in my view. Why, during a cost of living crisis, are our councils pursuing a policy that we know disproportionately affects people on low incomes and triples small businesses that have already borne the costs of the disastrous lockdown policies? Colleagues in Glasgow have told us that the LEZ is killing the city centre, and it was described last night by one of the business people on the panel as a low economy zone, and I think someone else described it as a local exclusion zone. Our city centres are already decimated. They're showing reduced footfall, empty shops. We have in Edinburgh, in George Street, which was our prestige shopping street, we've got homeless people pitching tents in the doorways of empty shops. There's litter, there's broken pavements, there's potholed roads. Why would we want to make any of that, worse? And why are local authorities and indeed sectoral governments not promoting policies that generate economic recovery, that support small businesses and could revitalise our city centres, rather than pursuing these ideological green vanity projects? Economic recovery requires investment, of course, and councils are repeatedly having their funding cut. But cameras and bollards and planters and cycleways, they all require investment too. So who's deciding the spending priorities? It's certainly not us, the local residents. We want to see our bins emptied, our swimming pools open, our libraries open, our roads and pavements maintained, our schools funded, our care services funded, housing provided. The list is endless of things that we would choose to spend on. The Together organisation published a report at the end of last year that details how the so-called grassroots green organisations, the people who are advocating these green policies, all receive enormous amounts of cash from 4 billionaire philanthropic foundations in the UK. So they're not grassroots at all, they're top-down. Similarly, our scientific institutions, research centres and universities are being bankrolled by the same foundation. So it looks as though vested interests are collaborating and essentially undermining our democracy. The report is called Clean Air, Dirty Money, Filthy Politics. And I would urge you to get online and read it for yourself. Because it's not the billionaires who have to live with the effects of these policies, it's ordinary folk like you and me. In my view, these LEZ policies are not about improving air quality, they're about generating income. Glasgow Council took nearly £500,000 of fines in the first 4 months of the scheme. LEZ in London rakes in £700,000 a day. The scheme in Edinburgh is going to cost £400,000 a year to operate, and the Green Party have already indicated that this is only phase 1. So the intention is clear. The fines from phase 1 are going to fund more restrictions and more penalties, unless we stand up and say no more. The public's voice has been excluded from politics in this country for too long. And as the placards tonight are saying, it's time for us to take back democracy and to free our streets.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to turn to you, Stuart. We're going to ask a few questions. Then if you guys get ready, we're going to have a mic at the front and people can come up. But Stuart, you talked about some of the ways this plays out in different areas and like this kind of top-down approach with a bit of theatre, that they don't really, people who are running things are not interested in hearing or engaging. And Elizabeth presented this argument as well about kind of technocrats internationally. But I wonder to what extent, when you actually speak to people, they genuinely believe these measures really need to happen, that they actually are committed to a sense of ideas and principles, and they think perhaps this conversation's insane, we're all wackos. And of course, the science says, or the evidence proves, or we all know that. Or to what extent there's this kind of dishonesty there. I mean, what's happened? Are we saying that they've just gone mad and they don't know what's going on at all? Because I think if you speak to people who argue from an environmentalist point of view, they think that we're winning the argument. They're like, it's just unbelievable, these petrol heads are still doing it, we're not moving. How do you see this in terms of the people one might have called the elite, they're running things and everything, and then how they're seeing it and what's really going on, if you would?
Can I say I don't know? I mean, I think about this too abstractly, and I'm kind of obsessed with what I would describe as the new elites, because I think it's a new group of people who run society today. I think I'm a lefty, right? I'm old. You can boo if you want to. I don't mind. But thank you. In the past, you seem to have two groups, kind of working class groups that are socialist outlook and conservatives of the establishment. I don't think either of them now run things. I think there's a kind of middle group. And I think they're really disconnected from what I would think of as politics and from the public. And I don't know if this is going to answer your question, but the problem I see is that I think we have a political class, for example, who they have a political and moral vacuum. In other words, they don't really stand for anything of substance. They don't really have any strong beliefs. I met Hamza Youssef when I was campaigning against the Offensive Behaviour at Football Act, another law I was opposing, which we did get rid of eventually. I would describe him, and I'm trying not to be cruel here, but I would describe Hamza Youssef as a man without quality. A really empty shell of a person with no principles, no conviction. Almost like a student politician. I increasingly think of politicians like this. And I think there's something to do with their emptiness, but also their distance from people and their almost their fear of ordinary people and ordinary people having freedom and freedom to act. That their instinct is to limit. Right? If you look at just about any policy, the instinct is to limit people, right? To try and regulate them, hold them back, limit their language, limit the freedom that parents have, limit the freedom to explore, to develop oil, to produce industry, and so on. It's limit constantly. They have this kind of driving sense to limit things. And I think it is something to do with this. What seems to be developing, particularly at the minute, is a new type of morality. And it's based around limits, but it's presented in a progressive way. Right? So Graeme was saying, he supports sustainability. But the problem with language like that is whoever sets up a business or does anything and says, I want this to be unsustainable, right? Nobody, right? It's a language trick almost that nobody is against, right? I was just thinking, Lord, save the planet. Who walks around saying, I want to destroy the planet, right? So you get this new sort of moral language developed around things like sustainability, things like saving the planet, things to do with progressive causes, being against racism, etc., etc. All things that everyone kind of agrees with, right? But then the consequences of this is always that they are looking at the people and saying, well, how do we limit them? How do we prevent them? How do we regulate their activities? So I think, I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think there's a kind of culmination of these various factors where they're starting to build a kind of new moral sense of themselves, which they see as progressive, but essentially it's anti-people. It's an anti-humanism, right, where human beings are seen as a virus, right, and because they're disconnected from people, and just talk amongst themselves, saying all this stuff all the time continuously, anything that's outside of that seems like almost evil to them. Yeah, and they genuinely think people are a basket of deplorables. They think you can't be trusted on juries. Right? Juries, possibly the most important democratic thing in terms of where people have actual power, real power to make decisions, where you trust people, a remarkable development through the Enlightenment, through English law and other countries, absolutely foundational to democracy. And they want to get rid of that because they think these people are essentially scum, right? And I'm putting that harshly, but that is really, when they say, and I know that we're not talking about rape juries and all the rest of it, but when they say you believe in rape myths, they're saying you're scum, right? That's what they're really saying. And so I think that's what's happening. There's a disconnected elite who are anti-human.
Thanks. I think you put that very well. If you pass the mic, I want to address this a bit more, right? Because within what people may have called the freedom movement, and so there is a sense in which sometimes all of this is just inevitable. And I know you're not saying that because you've been involved in campaigning, you've submitted this, you talked about it very articulately. But whilst the technocratic elite might genuinely, and I agree with what Stuart's saying, they think that we're mad, bad and dangerous, we're not trustable, we need things done to us, and we're rapaciously consuming toxic. But there's also a sense sometimes where people go, well, it's all the sheep and they're all stupid and we've seen the light. And what's that sense of our own agency, our own possibility, how much we can assert ourselves, how much confidence we have in convincing our fellow citizens of the merit of our arguments, right, the people who are all involved in. How do you see that, Elizabeth, in terms of the work you've been doing, and how upbeat are you about it? How do you see that prospect? Because Klaus Schwab might say things, and Keir Starmer might say he'd rather be in Davos than Westminster. But actually, we've seen that when people around the country decide to do something, we can quickly get things done and change it if enough of us do it in a certain way. How do you see that prospect, and how much do you think that we can develop that realistically. Let's, in how you see it, in terms of the concerns about the globalism you talked about.
I think one of the easier things to get through to people is the ULEZ and the car situation. The fact they want us not to have cars, because that really affects people. When it's on your own doorstep, you will pay attention. The globalist situation is a little harder. A couple of us have gone out and tried to educate the public on the fact that the people who are calling us bots, we did not elect them. These are the elites. And then they, through their own global organizations, the WF, have got many, many young global leaders. Trudeau, Jacinda in New Zealand, Richie, I think, is from that. You mentioned trilateral. Somebody mentioned trilateral. That's Keir Starmer. They have all been selected and put in those positions. So we have to change that. We have to get them out of there, because until we get them out of there, nothing is going to change. I should say nothing, but we really have to try and educate people that the people that are in government right now are Conservative, Labour, two sides of the same coin. They're both going to end up supporting the kind of things that we're trying to resist. And I think if you tell a lie often enough, it will be accepted as the truth. So it's really difficult to get through to people, but we have to keep trying, because we've got to get people on our side. We've got to get more people
Thank you. So I want to push it a little further. So, Graeme, you spoke really well about kind of how it's developed in terms of you speaking to people on the street and asking questions and engaging them and all of that. And this sense of our agency, our strength, our capacity to have an influence locally, regionally, nationally. It's inspiring what you've done so far, and also, so I just, in terms of speaking to this a bit more, because obviously Pab's come over from Edinburgh, we had a great event in Glasgow, you're connected with people in Dundee and others, and we're all doing that across Scotland and across the UK. It seems to me we've got an enormous opportunity to have a big impact, right? The question is, how much each of us is going to take that responsibility, going to convince some of our fellow colleagues, work friends, neighbours, and that type of thing. How do you see that in the context of what perhaps we're up against and some of the things that, you've asked why, but Stuart's spoken about and Elizabeth's spoken about?
Well, I think it's very difficult, because it does feel in one sense that we're fighting against a tide. We keep seeing new laws and new regulations coming out that we disagree with, and if you're fighting these off one by one, it's like you're standing at a tennis court against one of these machines that's firing balls at you 100 miles an hour or more and more. It's very difficult to deal with. That's talking from an individual perspective, but obviously there's many of us in this room, there's many of us in the country that completely disagree with what's happening. And I guess to quote a cliche, we're the silent majority. And that's the thing that I think we need to change. We need to become the noisy majority. And the only way that can happen is that everybody gets involved. We're all busy, we've all got lives. I don't want to be here, really, if I'm honest. I'm leading a busy life. I'm only here because I started that Facebook movement so early that you meet people and you get talking to people. But nobody else was doing it. So I decided to do that, and really just because I felt it was necessary. So I also prefer somebody else to do it. But we all have a part to play. So, as I say, the best way to play our part is to get involved in some shape or form, whatever time you can spare, or I guess funds to donate to certain causes, then that's what we'll have to do. But as I said when I was doing my talk, I think something that we can all do is write to our MPs, write to our councillors, and just let them know exactly what we think. And in no uncertain terms, it doesn't all have to be polite, fancy language. Let them know you're annoyed. Write a demanding tone, but it's really, really important that we all let them know what we're thinking.
Great, thank you. And just to follow on from that a little bit, if just in terms of There have been changes. I think the thing is that sometimes we get a sense that so much is happening. Like I just come out of Glasgow and you see these cyclist lanes, right? No one's in them. And yet you've got potholes, you've got cars that are all blocked up, and this thing is all happening. But as it happens, a little victory, Glasgow City Council's backed away about the extension of the 10 p.m. parking, right? That's really important for hospitality, retail and others. And there are things that are being pushed back with. How much do you think, well, how do you see the prospect, Pam? I mean, like, really, in terms of how much people can have an impact if we organise together and we kind of get people, we mobilise them. How do you see that?
I think that's the absolute value of the organisation that you set up, to be honest, because we pockets of activity around the UK, and when you're just working in your own local neighbourhoods, you have to say that that's you. But once you can see that other neighbourhoods are doing the same thing, and then when good practice is shared, so for example, what I've heard tonight from Elizabeth about this document that's been presented to Aberdeenshire Council, I am going to be all over that and see if we can do something similar, you know, in our city. And of course, a lot of the English cities, because they're further ahead of us, the LEZs have been established longer. Then again, they're together sharing with us good practice around the successes. And we've had, I think, Stoke-on-Trent was turned down, wasn't it? And other cities that had to be rolled back. So it gives encouragement, it gives hope. And I think that is really helpful, because otherwise people feel ground down. I know a lot of the folk I've spoken with feel ground down, that they're just not being listened to, so always like there's no point. And I think the organisation here, the people around you tonight, we can see there is a point. There are lots of other people that think the way that you do. And there's another thing around feeling safe to express these views. And that was one of the reasons I joined Together a couple of years ago, was nobody else that I was in proximity with thought the same as I did. I was the Fruit Loop. So just knowing that you're not the Fruit Loop, and actually the folk do agree with you, and the silent majority, I think, is absolutely right. We can't desire it anymore. We are the majority, and when we recognise that, then we have power.
She was going to say something, and now can we have the volunteer, can I come down the front please, and we're going to start taking any questions or contributions. And you could come to the front, you can make a little line. That's if people do want to speak, come join us up here. Stuart.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that I didn't think it can be quite difficult, because we live quite individual lives. You know, we used to be in more clubs. Even there's a book called Bowling Alone by an American, and he looked charts when people are joined to even bridge clubs, sports clubs. And the reason he called it bowling alone was not because nobody was going to be bowling, as in 10-pin bowling, but that by around 2020, he said if the trend continues, there won't be a single bowling league left in the whole of America, because people don't join things anymore. So I think it can feel quite isolated. Life can feel quite isolated. But I think the point to bear in mind that across Europe and beyond Europe, across the Western world, there is a populist backlash taking place, because the politics and the institutions that exist at the moment do not reflect what people want. Right? Whether that's in education, whether it's to do with road policies, across the board, there is a reaction to it. It's because there is this divide between the people who are running things and the public. Right? There's no doubt about it. You look at what I was talking about in terms of those laws. 70%, 75% of the people oppose it. 75% of the politicians vote for it. This is a divide, and it's not going to go away. And that sense of discontent is simply going to grow. And that's why I think what Alan's done together, and what I'm trying to do with the Scottish Union for Education, is really important, because what we need is new institutions. Because the institutions that exist at the minute don't do what they say on the tin. Right? Conservatives are not conservative, liberals aren't liberal, and the Labour Party is as far away from anything to do with Labour as anything I can possibly think of. And you look at that across the institutions, the police don't police, educators don't educate. Every single institution is crumbling in terms of what its core purpose is. We need real institutions, right? And once those institutions become established, you have the potential then to really make a difference. And that's why I think things like this initiative, and as I say, the Scottish Union for Education, we set up a year ago and it's doing really well so far. I think there's real potential for new institutions and also new political parties actually to emerge and develop. And with it, in 10 years' time, we could have a very different plan.
Thanks, sir. So, if you've got critical points, come up the front here. You can use the mic. Is anyone want to come and ask a question or make a contribution? You come on, Vic. Come on. Yeah, you can come up and we're going to do it. So, and you can say who you are if you'd like to. Mate. We'll have a few of them and then we'll go back to this thing says, come on, pop out of there. Now, come on. I, you. Right.
Right. Thanks for having me. Sorry, just for me to come and leave my sort of university environmental bubble echo chamber and hear about these refreshing perspectives. This, I sort of first take a different line on these particular issues. So I was intrigued to see what people think about the recent evidence that's come to light about the amount of respiratory disorders in Aberdeen, which are particularly concentrated in valleys of areas where car emissions can't escape. So I was quite interested in this because I've asked them. So as I find as I'm kind of walking around the city, cycling around the city, where you're taking a car, maybe outside the car, I find that I'm getting strong asthmatic reactions if I'm going in those areas. So that's one thing that's just quite interesting to kind of share. And additionally, I thought it was interesting after visiting in London, the contrast there of air quality. It was really refreshing walking around in that zone. I was I quite enjoyed it actually. It's quite different. So it's kind of, but in terms of the points which I agree with, I thought it was really interesting about the direct democracy, or should you guys speak about a little bit, such as Stuart earlier. I think we do need a new system of democracy, of direct democracy, not representative democracy, where we can have actual evolved voting rights, such as what happens in Switzerland in the confederate system, where you have direct democracy from the canton level or even the local council level, and get to vote on laws from the local assembly level, so power flows up from the community level upwards. I think we need massive reform to take the power back to local communities away from Westminster. There's a lot of centralisation reform needed, so I think I can definitely agree with you guys about that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is John Thornton. I'm originally from Mayfield, and I've been living in Aberdeen for about the last 40 years. Fascinating stuff tonight. Stuart made it recall we think months ago, and one of the council had mentioned that the LEZ had been was forced on it as a council by the Scottish government, and the opponent had made it as small as possible. Remember the conversations we had. There are some quite good out there and some not so good ones, and the same with NSBs. I don't think regulatory NSBs is the answer. You've got to get to see them. I've got a fair amount of experience myself with it, with this MSTs and so on. And unless you bun pull, you're not going to get anywhere because they'll very buy some of it, look they might buy it. And that looked at me for the fact that all we have today is not a democracy. It's controlled by then they up there. Whoever decides something, that's what we do. We get into parties, we then part the party line. Now, if you look at the information in Scotland Farm about the voting, the gentleman making a shot, nothing's up in Arbiter, with our own party lines. But interestingly, only is there in the East field, the Labour Party. The lot there for the vote, the only need to look what's against the Tories. I'm not saying being as part of body with the fine, they've got argument. The same thing is probably going to happen with some of the rest of the legislation that's coming. Today, we'll just the Party Harvey push the new rental bill, and that's going to be an absolute disaster for people who have the rent property. People need places to live, but they're going to look after the property. If you're a landlord and you have a tenant, the tenant can do what he likes. And, that's no comeback. I thought that this new law, this is Party Harvey. Unfortunately, there's too much of this. And I think what you're doing is great, but what's going to have to happen is a massive movement. And how we get from here to there, I don't know how.
Okay, thank you.
That needs to happen.
All right, thanks, John, for your contribution.
Hi there, my name's Awesome. My name's Helen McPherson, and I myself have noticed the equality in Aberdeen has definitely changed since we've had the incinerator at Alton's industrial estate. I feel it was wrote, and that is also fueled by diesel. So air quality, they're trying to kill us on the diesel cars, why something up when they use diesel and filter all the stuff. They say it's filtered, but anyway, that's one thing. I also feel ever since COVID, we've been dictated to, particularly by the government, not. And I now feel more so with the local council. And, we didn't, as you say, we didn't get a chance to say anything. We didn't get a chance to object. And I mean, I commute through Aberdeen by car from Cove to Bridgedawn. But if I have to take the bus, I've got to get up in the middle of the night, I say, or 2 buses to get to my job for 8 o'clock in the morning, which is not funny, And because every bus seems to need to stop at Union Street, but what's in Union Street now? And at 8 o'clock in the morning, perhaps 7 in the morning, at that point, I don't need to be at Union Street. So, but anyway, that's and bus gates and the less zone UV, the route I take involves.
Speaking to the mic a little bit more, please.
Sorry. The route I take involves Virginia Street, which to me is part commercial, really, and also the underpass under Union Street. That was put in place, was it mid-90s or late 80s? And that was designed to take the heavy vehicles off of Union Street. Now you can't go under there and go down Guild Street, down Lower Market Street, going against a bus gate. So to me, that is just a pointless exercise. Okay.
Great, thank you. We've got 2 more, then we're going to come back to the panel. So if you come on up, if you can speak directly into the mic, don't hold it, but just speak directly into the mic so we can hear you on the stream as well, please.
Okay. Right. I'll be brief. One thing I've found interesting tonight is the focus both on the bigger political issues, which are being ignored by everyone, and how they're being influenced on, and how democracy is being destroyed, and how it's been destroyed locally with LEZs, and how it's been destroyed locally with bus gates. Now, this might sound trivial, but there's a point to it. I'm a dog walking dog sitter, so I must have a car. I can't alter my job without a car. And one of the dogs I get, Poppy, I've been looking after for 3 years now. One day for a laugh in the park, I said to her owner, why don't we put Poppy on the ballot paper? Poppy's People's Party. Because given what we've heard tonight, if he's not talking to a bloody dog, he's talking to a politician. So if you see Poppy on the ballot paper, vote Poppy.
Yeah, come on up.
I wanted to just give a little bit of extra information around the fact that this is about power and impeding the individual freedoms that we've got as the ordinary people. So I work for a carbon removal tech startup, right? But I'm on the other side of the science with yourself. And the reason I joined that startup a year ago, naively, was thinking that if I could, we've got an amazing technology. We use the basalt from the local quarries around here, spread it on farmland. It sequesters carbon through a proven, empirical, data-driven sort of science methodology. It's cheap. It's a free byproduct. It should be globally scalable, right? My company's been going to government bodies and councils to try and pitch this. This should be globally scalable. You'd think that our biggest customers would be the governments that say that they want the true net zero. They're not interested. It's actually being bought up by the Stripes, the Microsofts, all these big conglomerates that just want to hit their net 2030 goals. They're not interested one bit, and that's been the inside. And I've actually resigned from that position. And I'm proud of that because I've seen it from the inside. These are the smartest people I've ever worked with. PhD, I've never worked in a place that has so much academic sort of influence. And dissonance is there, right? They mean well. We're at the bleeding edge of the science, and it's being ignored by the bodies that say this is the whole point of saving the planet. It's bullshit. So, just about the power bit.
Thank you. All right, we've got one more. Come on up, and then we're going to go to the panel and come back out again.
So, I've got two little points to make. I don't know what solution might work, but personally, as soon as my freedom of movement in the streets in Aberdeen was hindered, I took a personal vow not to make any purchase within the city. It's a tiny little move, but if everybody voted with their feet, somebody would begin to notice. And I understand things have to get worse before they get better. And I've been very vocal on social media to get everybody to vote with their feet. Don't consume in the city. We're not allowed to go there, or they're making it very difficult. So if we all make a point of doing that, then things will get worse. But hopefully they will get better. And the other point I wanted to make is, I heard this little story. Now, I'm going to butcher the story terribly, but the message will hopefully get across. And this is a story between, I think it was one of the Caesars, the Roman Caesars, and one of his advisors. And the advisor came up and said that we've got all these slaves amongst the population here. Why don't we tag them in a way? We'll make them all wear a yellow bracelet or something, and then we'll know who's a slave and who's not. And Caesar said, you know what, that's a terrible idea, because the slaves will very soon realize that there's way more slaves than us. So my point is, let's do something to show, in the same way that Carl Schwab wears these stupid little pin, we can come up with a symbol, a pin, a bracelet, a sticker, something, just to encourage everybody that holds our side of the story to realize that there is strength in numbers and that we are the silent majority. So, two little things just to add to the pot.
Thank you. Right. Just to say, on the clean air point, the first report that Ben Powell did, Han talked about the second report on clean air. The first one was looking at the claim and the assertion that 4,000 people died in London as a consequence of the air, and that LEZs was cleaning it all up. Which was absolute hyperbole, was absolutely not the case. The metrics in air are better than they have ever been, and actually in the UK are better than most of our peers internationally. And it was made up by extrapolating a very particular thing from a report, and it was nonsense. It's basically a lie. So we might go around feeling, and it might well be in certain places, that there are still places that pump out some things and they impact it. But that was not the case, and that's not the case with the LEZs and the CASs. These claims are being made quite often, usually from modelling, and I would recommend people have a look at Martin Durkin's new film as well, Climate the Movie. It's very interesting in some of that. But in similar ways, we were told about modelling in other areas. We know the last 3 years we've just been through. But I think it's really important to touch on this thing, because it does seem to me that in Scotland, where you've had the Scottish Enlightenment and one of the biggest contributions to humanity, to get some of the things in terms of the idea of rule by law, but also about consensus, the idea of democracy. People say, oh, democracy, what in there? Silly. That doesn't mean nothing. But the great contribution to humanity of that idea, of the idea that we all have a stake and an ability to assert ourselves, and the limits within it as well, if we wanted to do more than that. And this perhaps sense that we've got some low horizons, and that maybe there's not that much we can do. And actually, I'd be very interested to hear what you all think, but I just want to say that in many ways, the only limit we've got to anything is our own sense of that. And actually, even though I think these authoritarians that are currently ruling, they're very weak authoritarians, so they have this contemptuous idea of us. But when we start pushing back on things, quickly they start panicking. Sometimes they start crumbling. So you only have to look, this is a tiny thing, but the discussion around net zero all began to change when they saw that perhaps in Uxbridge something was happening. Most councillors are only voted in by a few hundred people. Many MPs are petrified. It's not just about writing a letter. It's not just about meeting them or phoning them. It's about a series of different things, from campaigning, sending them messages, engaging with them, getting the press involved, getting our fellow colleagues involved. But I think also the sense of what's possible and to assert ourselves and to shape and curate our world, which is what we do every day. And actually, the only thing that's really prohibiting that is our sense of ourselves. And that's the spirit of together. But I wanted to see if, I want to go around this way again, just if you could each take one point that was made in the audience to respond to that in a way you would, and then we'll go back out. So Stuart, with you, please.
Yeah, I'll just cheat, but I just respond to what you just said there as well, actually, in terms of pushing back. There's a document that's used in education, which is being adopted by all the universities, a kind of anti-racist charter. And one of the bizarre things, they say they create a chart in it. And one of the weird things, so they've got, you're really racist here, then the next one's white indifference, then something else, and then there's allyship. So it's a kind of chart of how racist you are, essentially. And in the second bar, white indifference, which isn't good, as you can imagine. They have academic freedom in there, right? So if you believe in academic freedom, there's a problem with white indifference, right? Because it's the idea that you believe that people should be able to speak, and if you allow just academic freedom, God, what could possibly happen? Racism could reign, etc., etc. But the press, I put this out to the press, and the press got in touch with the guy that wrote it, and as soon as the press got on his back, he started to panic and started to backtrack, because he realizes how ridiculous this idea is, that academic freedom is essentially racist. Right? So I do think there is real scope for showing how idiotic a lot of this stuff is. Just on the question of environmentalism and how rational or irrational it is. I was desperate once. I never quite got to ask this, but I was at a meeting where there were some environmentalists. And the question I wanted to ask was, if we could industrially create mass machines, right? So we'll use loads of steel, loads of all sorts of carbon emissions being put all over the place, and we could stick these machines on the top of mountains, and they could suck the CO2 out of the air, and we could resolve the problem. Would you support that initiative? And the reason I would want to ask them that is because I think they would say no. I don't believe that they would support an actual practical industrial policy that could resolve the problem of global warming, because it's a moralistic issue for most of them, right? And it's an issue where they think modernity and industrialization and human action in industry is actually destructive. And I don't think they would support it. And I think that's a kind of, we need to think about the people who are promoting these environmental policies as people who don't really believe or don't really, or almost don't want to resolve the problem. Because the problem they see is humanity as a virus acting on the world, right? And the more that they see industry, production, and steel produce and all the rest of it, they see a problem. They don't think of a solution. And so I'm not surprised when that lady there was saying about, there are things that could be done. Practically, that could actually work. I actually see them almost as a barrier to some of these environmental problems that exist in the first place, because it's become a moralistic cause, not a practical problem.
All right, thanks. About what I call this idea is that the standards to look at that. The job is building what is living with circle is hardest, where you make green or there, and all not putting the gear into it, and plus of the steering competent. Yeah, it looks like, well, he's little the is great, but slowly that they like why we see with some people that we was like that not that so this is security solution and they said that they should remember them too.
Okay, thank you.
In addition to morality, I think money is a big issue. As I mentioned in my talk tonight, $4 billion per day is being allegedly made from net zero. That's a lot of money to give up if they were to admit that climate change is not as big a problem as it's been made out to be. I was really intrigued by the suggestion made by the gentleman over here to just stay out of Aberdeen for a whole day. But again, that takes numbers in order to make the impact that we would want to do. But we can go to our community council meeting. Ours is tomorrow night in Port Lethen, fourth Thursday of every month. And then we can get a chance to talk to councillors. We can go to the council meetings. We can sit in on them online and they know we're there. So there are things that we can do that are difficult to do, but if we do it en masse, it will have an effect.
You can come up here with a mic because people can't hear you, but then we'll go to you afterwards, Graeme. Yeah.
I'm quite upset about that, to be honest, because I think if you abandon the small business owners in these towns, it is absolutely a terrible thing to do. They're on their knees right now. They're getting robbed daily. The police are not helping them. So that's, to me, not a solution. We need to support the local community as much as possible whilst challenging them. And the other thing is, it's really important for people to know, really important, email doesn't work. They don't respond to email. They don't have to record any emails. You must write a letter, because a letter goes in and it's recorded and they've got to answer. So don't email councils. It's a waste of time. They'll just bin it and then and they just won't respond.
Can you tell us who you are as well? You should get involved in locally, because I think it's a really important point you're making about business and the different group.
Yeah, my name's Mark Ellington, but I'm the same as you. I cycle through Aberdeen all the time, and it's just dying. And it's really embarrassing that we've got this community together to save Union Street in spite of what the council are doing. We can't drive anywhere, we can't go anywhere. The town is dead. So support local business.
Thank you. Quite well, mate.
I would just like to respond and say we absolutely are supporting the small business. World Economic Forum objective, get rid of 28% of small business. That's a fact. Okay, so, and they're reading their objective because there's places in Union Street now that in a row, 5 stores all closed down. But I'm just saying, we need to do something that's big. And if we were able to get the whole of Aberdeen to, for one day, I think the small business would actually appreciate it. But I get what you're saying, totally.
1 minute. Let's go around and then we'll come back for some more and everyone will get a chance to speak. But just to say on this, and I want to hear what you guys think, my personal background was that I was in the hospitality business and for 8 years we spent convincing councils, the government, the Home Office, the police, licensees that we weren't scumbags, we weren't all about antisocial behaviour, but we lit up streets, we brought new cultural phenomena in, we contributed to the cultural exports and GDP in the UK, and we managed to convince them, and we spoke internationally and convinced them of these things. And then the lockdowns came, and they pulled the shutters down and they shut it all down, and we lost about 15,000 venues across the country, and all these new egregious measures came through, and after it all, we saw many of those things continued. And I think it's really important what this gentleman's saying about supporting people, and actually the idea that we would allow things to be isolated and suffocated. In a way, what we want to do is we want to repopulate, we want to insist that we get control of our streets and we free them and we open them up and we have as much solidarity with everyone, all the different parts of the community, the business community, residents, students and everyone, and take a stand and say what needs to go are these bollards and these cameras and these fines when you've got councillors saying we're going to make it life as difficult as possible, we're going to shut you down, and they think they can get away with it. But if we actually unite and start organising and getting involved, they're not going to be able to do it. So I think it's really important. And you should kind of join up with Sheila and Elizabeth and the other guys, and we should get as many from the business community involved with all the things that we do. Graeme.
Yeah, I'd like to just make an additional point on the small business aspect. I think most of us agree that small businesses really we should try and favour them over these large multinational corporations, because I think I've seen a meme that's been circulated online, and the basis of that meme is that when you shop at a large international company, you're helping a CEO buy another jet. But when you shop at a small local business, you're helping somebody put their children through school or pay for clothes or just feed their family. So I think that's very, very important. And to quote another thing that I've seen as well, the saying is you should buy local or buy local. Because if you're not using local businesses, as the gentleman said, they will disappear. And I think that's worse for all of us.
Okay. Pam?
Yeah, my views are absolutely the same on small business for sure. The point that struck me from the floor tonight was the lady who has left her carbon capture role, and the fact that, sorry, am I not? Although it's a scalable option, it's also cheap. And therefore nobody's interested in it. And that reminded me of the COVID situation when there were cheap alternative medicines available. And again, nobody was interested because the people who are making the decisions are big corporations. And we've got corporatism and corporate capture as one of the driving forces in our decision making. And that saddens me to hear that even in this modern technology, the same issues are prevailing.
So we're going to go out for another round, and then we're going to come back to the panel, and then we're going to have some informal drinks together in the tap room. So if you do want to speak, come up and speak now and ask your question or make your point, rather than when we start speaking again, just shout from the floor, because you won't have the mic, and we want to be able to hear you and listen to your point and engage with it properly. So there was someone here. Anyone else, please come on up. Yeah, come on up and you can make a point. But this is going to be the last round, so do come up if you want to speak or make a contribution or ask a question.
I'll make a wee point here. I'm an ex-bus driver, 37.5 years with First Group, Now, there's a lady a short while ago said that there wasn't a bus from Cove to the Bridge of Dawn. Well, it's not for the want of me trying to get them. They don't want to know. I have been at them time and time again when I was at work to get a number of buses from the Bridge of Dawn area to Cove, because that's taking the people from their homes right to where they work. That group did not want to know. They still don't. And that's what we're all facing here. We could have a first-class bus system. When I started in the job 37 and a half years ago, during the peak period, we had a 2-minute service. Off-peak was 5 minutes, 10 minutes after 7:30 at night. Now, if you are lucky and a bus actually turns up, you have to wait 15 minutes during the day and 30 minutes at night. And they say, we want you out of your cars. It's never going to happen with a bus service like that. And I am very, very angry about this LEZ. I live just outside the LEZ, and it is now going to take me 5 miles to go to my family instead of 2.5 miles down through South College Street. They haven't left any corridor whatsoever. They've cut the city in half. And that is damn right disgraceful. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. We'll pass it to the next person behind you, please. Thank you.
Hi. Just a really brief point. What Mark was saying earlier on about the local communities. This is nothing new. The war on the high street's been here for 45 years. With the advent of the outer towns shopping centres that were incentivised and council supported to set up at the detriment to the high street. You know, you walk down I can think of a few exceptions. York's a beautiful city to walk down and go shopping. Over in the Lake District, there are town centres. But you go down any major sort of medium-sized town high street, they're decimated. It's charity shops, it's bookies. There's nothing there. I'm fortunate our daughter lives in Holland, in The Hague, and there's a fishing port, Scheveningen. Apologies if I didn't pronounce that right, but it's an absolute joy to go there. You walk down the high street there, the value, the choice, proper choice, not the same shop regurgitating the same item. And that's down to government policy. And I'm not going to drag it on, but it's all about cause and effect. It's about apathy with the political classes that Stuart talked about. We have become apathetic. And just to address your point, the pin you were looking for is on the board there.
Okay. Thank you. There was someone behind you. Right, if we've got no more questions or points, I'm going to... come on up. To come up, don't be shy. I want to see you just come up, because that's going to be your last opportunity if you don't. So if you do want to say something, come and join up here. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you were talking about that each of that could be, I think...
Speaking to the mic.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Can everybody hear? Yeah. So each of them could be a topic of itself, but I think all comes down to people being united. And I think what politicians have done is they effectively have divided people left, right, Tory, conservative, SNP, this and that. But when it really matters is that we're people, and by large we agree about pretty much the same things. We want good healthcare, we got good education, we want safe streets, no crime and things like that. So I suppose my question is for you, how do we mobilize these people? For example, at work today, before finishing my work, I had this work colleague, and he will be directly affected by this LEZ zone, because he won't be able to travel through that. And I said, well, there's this event happening, do you want to come? And he was like, and he didn't come, obviously. So how do you get them to do these things if they're like not even seemingly not interested? Although I said this is directly affecting you, so it's like, to me, it seems like a little bit like hopeless almost. So it's...
Okay, thank you.
Yes, quick, just, well, I was really one of the guys who's up there on, I drive, or occasionally I drive 50 miles out into the Shire, either to Inverurie or to Bankery. I can park next door to the shops. I can go for a coffee and back in the car and come back whichever way. The second point is that a bit removed from the city, but it's food security and the danger that's going to come from the net zero policy and the present SSAN. The pilots that put us through the country, they're tearing out the country, that two lots of estates are pulling down houses already. There's going to be removal of people, and this is going to hit everybody in a little town. The prices aren't going to go higher. They're never going to come down. They're going to go higher. But it's a big, big problem.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ian. I've never been to one of these things before. I'm kind of curious as to who's this. This is the first time for anybody else to ever attend anything like this. Yeah, it's interesting because I kind of got a little bit also animated during all the lockdowns and so on, and all the government overreach, as you mentioned several times tonight, and the way the councils have behaved as well, in restrictions being delivered everywhere. And I think just the one little story I want to share with you is my sort of slightly elderly car, which is now, well, had to move on, if you like. It was a 9-year-old diesel, which we were all pushed towards getting because that was supposed to be the better fuel to be having. I've had various cars over the years. This thing was a little economical thing. It was a 1.6 diesel. It cost me £20 a year to tax because it was so economical. And then when the Glasgow zone came in, I was kind of stunned to see when the registration is, it's not allowed in. So it's the most economical car I've ever had in my life. Does 600 miles on a tank, and £20 a year to tax, and it's not allowed in Glasgow. And I was like, do you know what? I don't trust the agendas anymore, and I don't trust any of them. And I think that, as you say, it's distorted, and they're not representing the people anymore, and I'm very upset about it.
Thank you.
Well, it's me again. Anyway,
Speaking to the mic, then.
Oh, sorry. EVs are probably more advantage to people who have their own driveway, who can afford to have a second car, because they can't depend on the EV to get them up to, say, 600 miles like I can get in my car. And, you know, it's quite easy to do. You just drive economically. And but I can't park my car in my garden, so I would be penalised for having it charged up. But these expensive charging points, so that's one bit. And the gentleman at the right-hand side, was one bit that I'm griping about is the bit about having no jury in rape cases, you know, especially when it's historical child abuse. It's really, really traumatising. It's really traumatising for the people to have to face more people than they really need to, and also it might be very traumatising to the jury. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, so we're going to go back round this way, and I'd like you to sum up what you think, you know, in terms of what can be done about this and how you would like to leave the audience. And I would say, please do join us for drinks afterwards to carry on this informally. We want to get to speak and meet with everyone, get everyone a little bit more together. But we're going to start with Pam, just thoughts and reflections, just a quick one. I'm going to say a minute, but it will be 2 minutes time, but go for it.
I think I've just been encouraged to hear some new ideas tonight. I was at the Glasgow event last night. There were new ideas there. There was a lot of energy and passion in the room there. And I'm just excited to go back to Edinburgh and share some of these ideas and see if we can start replicating some of the activities and suggestions that I've heard tonight.
Thank you, Pam. Graeme?
Yeah, this is the first time I've been to one of these things as well, a public discussion forum. And I was quite encouraged by the conversations that's going on. I think a lot of us have gotten involved, and we've all got our stories to share. We've all got, I think we're all more or less moving in the same or similar direction. We're always going to have slightly different points of view in some areas, but that's fine. That's what it's all about. And it brings, like Pam was just saying, it brings new ideas and interesting ideas, which is great because we all learn something. But generally speaking, if we all have these kinds of conversations, then again, from my point of view, that's really the only way we can actually try and move things forward, really. So that's it.
Thank you, Greg.
It's just people power. We need you. We need you all. Some great ideas, and some people who haven't spoken, I'm sure, have got ideas too. We need that. We will win. I've never lost faith that we're going to win this gathering. So please come to the Together meeting first Thursday of the month, and we'll give you more details on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do it. I feel the need to respond. Actually, the traumatizing argument, I think, is really dangerous, because if you start from the position that you can't re-traumatize the victim, you've already decided that the person is a rapist and they're a victim. You don't know who the victim is until the result has come out. So if you start from the position that you need to protect the traumatized woman, you've already given up on justice, and we can't do that. I might have sounded slightly one-sided when I was talking about how irrational environmental policies can be, and I think there are rational environmentalists. I just think the environmentalists that are winning at the minute are irrational and moralistic, and you can tell that from the LEZ, like the one when I said there's no cars in Dundee. There are a few cars in Dundee, but there's no air quality problem, and yet we have these zones being put in anyway. Just to finish on, to throw in the education stuff, so anyone that's interested in the education stuff, let me know, because it's very important. If you want to know about irrationality and going against the people, you look at what's happening with education. Examples. Education is being sexualized in primary schools. So a parent came up to me the other day and said, oh, my head teacher has said they've taken the clitoris off the curriculum, right? They've taken the clitoris off the curriculum for primary schools. At 11 years old, it's official curriculum policy, or encouraged, to teach being transgender as a fact to 11-year-old children. They want you to have your children to have anti-racist maths lessons. History now has no chronology and is essentially a history of guilt. Geography no longer talks about the natural world, but has become a talk about environmentalism and sustainability. In English, you can get a national fine or even a higher, and this is from someone who works for the SQA, where grammar is said to not really matter. Don't worry about the spelling or the punctuation. And he's argued that you can actually get an A in higher and be functionally illiterate in Scottish schools now. Standards in Scottish schools are collapsing, and we have mass indoctrination taking place. So if you're interested in any of that, come and have a chat with me.
Thank you, Stuart. Well, I want to invite you all to have a drink and chat with us, but remember, we are the many, ye the many, they the few. And if you think about things in history, the sort of people that said, here I stand, I can do no other. Here I stand, I can do no other, when that thesis was put up on the wall. And it changed the world. And it changed the world, and the ideas that became so important and so promiscuous and so truly infective that it just changed the whole world. but not just the idea, because people committed to it. They argued it in the streets. They were heretics often, and they fought and died for it. They were prepared to sacrifice themselves for the idea of free speech, for the idea of free expression, of being able to meet one another and say what we think and speak to one another, and actually to be able to offend each other but listen and try and communicate with one another, the greatest part about being human. And the question is, everyone, are we going to let a few technocrats decide the future of our destiny, or are we going to be the ones that decide our destiny? Are we going to insist on upholding and defending our freedoms, our ability to associate, what happens in our schools, what happens with our economy, what happens on our streets, or are we going to let them do it to us? That's the question I'm going to leave you with tonight. And if you want to step forward and assert yourself, you should get involved locally. We'd love you to get involved. We'd love you all to become a member. If you could convince one of your friends to become a member and get involved, the more that we do this, the more we see an impact, the more of an effect we can have. And in the end, it's up to us. We make this world every day, and that's why we're going to invite you all to get involved with Together. So thank you for joining us tonight. Please stay and have a drink. And everyone at home watching, get involved. We're always stronger and better together. Finally, thank you to Ben and all the guys at Jupiter Communications, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you.